It was December 20th, 1968. The night was cold, dark, and still on a lonely stretch of road in Vallejo, California, when two teenagers, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, pulled over at Lake Herman Road for what was supposed to be an innocent date, just two kids in love, seeking privacy. But what happened next would be the first chapter in a nightmare that would haunt California and the world for decades. A shadow lurking in the darkness, a killer who would name himself, taunt police, toy with the media, and claim victims with a chilling randomness that made every late-night drive feel like Russian roulette. And though the night started like any other, it ended with blood in the snow and the first cryptic whisper of man who would soon become known as the Zodiac. The couple was parked in their Rambler station wagon when an unknown car pulled up behind them, headlights cutting through the dark, and out stepped a figure, his presence unsettling, his intent deadly. What happened next was fast and brutal. David was shot point blank in the head. Betty Lou ran, terrified, scrambling across the field, but she didn't make it far. Bullets ripping through her back, she collapsed, lifeless, her blood staining the grass beneath her. When police arrived, the scene was chaos. Two teenagers executed without reason, without mercy. No weapon recovered, no fingerprints, no suspect, just silence, and the first chilling mark of a predator who seemed to crave not just murder, but the fear it created. And though investigators didn't know it yet, they had just met the Zodiac. 6 months later, July 4th, 1969, Vallejo again, another couple, Darlene Farron and Mike Mageau, parked at Blue Rock Springs Park. The summer air filled with fireworks in the distance, laughter echoing from neighborhoods. But at the park it was quiet, too quiet. A car pulled up beside them. The driver left briefly, then returned, pulling in behind them, and suddenly their world exploded. The figure approached with a flashlight, blinding them, and then bullets tore through the night. 9 shots, fired into the car. Mike survived with serious injuries. Darlene was killed instantly. Another senseless attack, random, brutal. But this time the killer wasn't content to let silence speak. No, he wanted his voice heard, and he made sure the world listened. Less than an hour later, at 12:40 a.m., a call rang through the Vallejo Police Department. A calm male voice on the other end. "I want to report a double murder. If you'll go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year." The call was traced to a payphone at a gas station not far from the department, and the words were chilling. Not just a confession, but a claim, a link between the July 4th shooting and the Lake Herman Road murders. A voice not hiding the shadows, but stepping into the light, claiming ownership, demanding recognition. And with that phone call, the Zodiac introduced himself to the world. The media erupted, newspapers printing headlines about the mysterious caller. The community panicked, young couples afraid to park, families locking their doors, a sense of dread spreading across Northern California. And then came the letters, the first arriving on July 31st, 1969. 3 nearly identical letters sent to the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, each claiming responsibility for the shootings, each demanding publication, and each containing a piece of a larger puzzle, a 408-symbol cryptogram that the killer insisted would reveal his identity. This is the Zodiac speaking. He would later write. But here in his first letters he promised secrets, codes, and threats, warning that if the papers refused to print the ciphers, he would go on a killing spree, targeting school children on buses, shooting out tires and picking them off as they fled. It was a threat that paralyzed parents, horrified authorities, and forced the press into a grim bargain with the devil. Publish his words or risk the lives of innocent children. The letters were published, the cryptogram printed for the public to see, and amateur codebreakers across the country scrambled to crack the symbols. Rows of circles, triangles, strange characters, a language of madness, until finally, a California schoolteacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty managed to solve it, piecing together the killer's twisted manifesto. "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The message read, a chilling echo of Richard Connell's short story, The Most Dangerous Game. But unlike fiction, this was real. A man admitting his joy in a hunt, his thrill in the kill, and though the cipher was cracked, his name remained hidden, his identity untouched. The signature of a predator who would play cat and mouse for years to come. September 27th, 1969. Lake Berryessa, Napa County. A quiet afternoon for college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, who decided to spend the day by the water, picnicking, talking, enjoying the sun, unaware that a dark figure was watching them, a man in a hooded costume, executioner style, complete with a white cross-circle symbol on his chest, the mark that would become infamous, the mark of the Zodiac. He approached with a gun, binding them with clothesline, calm, methodical, telling them he had escaped from prison, that he only wanted money and a car. But then he pulled out a knife, and in a frenzy he stabbed Brian 6 times, Cecilia 10, their screams echoing across the lake, until silence fell. And then, as if to brand the scene, the killer walked to Brian's car and scrawled on the door with a black marker his symbol, the dates of his previous attacks, and the words by knife. A chilling signature of a man proud of his work. A man who wanted credit. A man who wanted fear. Cecilia would die 2 days later in the hospital. Brian would survive, giving police a description of the hooded figure, the calm voice, the deliberate actions. Another survivor to tell the world that the Zodiac wasn't just a shooter. He was evolving, experimenting, and he was only getting started. That same evening, a call once again rang into police, this time to the Napa County Sheriff's Office. The same calm male voice confessing to the stabbing, providing details only the killer could. No, his voice recorded, his tone eerie, detached, as if you're discussing a routine errand rather than human lives. The Zodiac was taunting again, reminding police that he was always one step ahead. 2 weeks later, October 11, 1969, San Francisco, a cab driver named Paul Stein picked up a fare at Mason and Geary Streets, his destination Presidio Heights neighborhood. But he would never make it at the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets. The passenger pulled a gun and shot in the head, execution style, before calmly wiping down the cab, tearing a piece of Stein's bloody shirt, and walking away into the night. But this time, the Zodiac had been seen, teenagers in a nearby house watched from their window as the crime unfolded. Calling police immediately, officers responded quickly, but in a devastating mistake. The suspect description was broadcast incorrectly as a black male, when in fact witnesses described a white male in his early 30s, stocky, with a crew cut and glasses. And because of that error, officers actually encountered the Zodiac walking casually in the neighborhood, but let him go. One of the most haunting missed opportunities in the case, the killer, slipping through their fingers, vanishing into the darkness once again. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter. Inside was a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt. Proof beyond doubt that the Zodiac was responsible, proof that he had killed in the heart of the city, not just lovers in secluded areas, but a working man on his shift, broadening his hunting ground, expanding his terror. And along with the trophy came more threats, more taunts, and the chilling line that would define his arrogance. This is the Zodiac speaking, the killer naming himself, branding himself, turning murder into theater, fear into currency, and challenging police to catch him if they could. And from that moment on, the Zodiac was more than a killer. He was a legend, a phantom, a ghost who wrote letters in coded symbols, who mailed blood-soaked fabric, who threatened to blow up school buses, who mocked investigators with details only he could know, a man who wanted the world to fear him, to remember him, to speak his name long after the blood dried. And he succeeded, because decades later, we are still here, still whispering, still asking the same question: who was the Zodiac? And why did he kill? By late October 1969, the Zodiac had become more than a killer. He had become a master manipulator, a man who used ink and paper as weapons as sharp as any knife. Every letter he sent to Chronicle, the Examiner, and the Times Herald performance designed not just to confess, but to terrify, not just to taunt, but to control, and the public, the media, and even the police fell into his game, reacting to every word, every symbol, every threat as if the killer himself was pulling their strings. And that's exactly what he wanted, because for the Zodiac it was never just about the kill. It was about the spectacle, the fear, the power of making millions of people check their locks at night and wonder if he was watching them too. The bloody swatch from Paul Stein's shirt proved he was real, proved he was bold, and proved he was escalating. And yet instead of hiding, he grew louder, bolder, more theatrical, his letters filled with rambling philosophies about life, about death, about man as the ultimate prey, quoting the most dangerous game, declaring his victims would become his slaves in the afterlife, an idea both chilling and bizarre, a twisted theology of murder as immortality, of killing as transcendence, and as his word spread across front pages, his legend grew, feeding him, giving him the notoriety he craved, and the more attention he got, the more he threatened, promising new killings if his ciphers weren't printed, promising bombs, promising terror, always dangling the possibility of another victim in front of an already panicked public. Police departments across Northern California scrambled, Vallejo, Napa, San Francisco, each with its own detectives, its own theories, its own evidence. But the Zodiac slipped between jurisdictions, exploiting the cracks, his crimes stretching across counties, his letters mailed in newspapers instead of police, his voice always one step removed, always just out of reach. But behind the theatrics, the killing seemed to slow. After Stein, no confirmed Zodiac murders were officially linked, though countless unsolved cases were whispered about, possible connections debated. The murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside in 1966, years before his confirmed spree, linked by handwriting, by style, by taunting notes left behind, or the countless disappearances and stabbings across California in the early 70s, each one potentially his, each one adding to his legend, each one impossible to prove, leaving investigators with more questions than answers, leaving the Zodiac free to vanish, to slip back into the shadows, to stop as suddenly as he started, or perhaps to keep going in silence, his true body count forever a mystery. And through it all, the public obsession grew. The Zodiac not just a criminal, but a cultural figure. Books written, documentaries made, conspiracy theories spun, every code, every letter, every clue dissected, debated, reinterpreted. The case living on long after the blood dried, long after the letters stopped, because the mystery remained, because the Zodiac had achieved what he wanted, immortality through fear, through puzzles, through a name that still makes hearts race. Zodiac. By 1970, the Zodiac had turned the Bay Area into a chessboard and himself into the unseen hand moving the pieces. Police scattered across counties trying to connect dots. Newspapers feeding him headlines. The public on edge with every letter. And yet the strangest thing happened. The killings seemed to slow, or at least the confirmed ones did, leaving detectives to wonder, had he stopped, or had he simply become smarter, killing in silence, leaving no signatures, blending his murders with the chaos of everyday crime so no one could tell which belonged to him and which did not. Because the truth was simple. The Zodiac thrived on attention, and without the letters, without the symbols, without the taunts, who could say for sure where his trail ended? In March 1970, a woman named Kathleen Johns was driving near Modesto with her infant daughter when she was pulled over by a man in a car who claimed her wheel was loose. Offering to help, she agreed. He tinkered, then drove off, only for the wheel to come loose minutes later. He returned and offered her a ride. She accepted, not knowing she was stepping into the nightmare. For hours he drove her in circles, rambling about killing people, about taking babies, until she managed to escape with her child, stumbling into a police station where she reported the terrifying encounter. And weeks later, the Zodiac himself claimed responsibility in a letter, mocking her, saying she'd been lucky to escape. Was he lying? Was he trying to inflate his legend? Or had she truly been face-to-face with a hooded figure who had stabbed, shot, and now attempted abduction? No one could say with certainty, but the fear it created was real. The idea that Zodiac wasn't just stalking couples, but women, mothers, children, anyone. That same year, more letters arrived, bizarre and theatrical, referencing the Mikado opera, weaving in lyrics about punishment, mocking police, always mocking, always gloating, and once again signing off with a chilling symbol, the crosshair that by now had become as infamous as his name. Every appearance of it in a mailbox or a headline sending chills down spines. The simplicity of it, the boldness, a logo of terror, a brand carved into history. By 1971, the official letters began to slow. Only a handful received, one claiming he had killed 37 people, a number far beyond the confirmed 5, a number that if true would make him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. But with Zodiac, truth and lies bled together, his words part confession, part performance, always leaving doubt, always leaving the question, was he bragging? Was he inflating, or was he telling us exactly what he had done and laughing as we failed to prove it? Police struggled under the weight of tips. Suspects piling into hundreds. Sketches circulated. Descriptions varied. Some saw a tall man, others stocky. Some swore he had dark hair, others light. The only consistent detail were the glasses, thick-rimmed, square, the kind that made him blend in as an average man of the era. Someone you'd see in a diner, in a library, at a bus stop, invisible until he pulled the trigger or drew his knife. And perhaps that was his greatest trick. Not the codes, not the letters, but the ability to disappear into normalcy, to become the man next door, the coworker, the stranger on the street, hiding in plain sight while an entire state hunted a ghost. In 1974, long after the frenzy had reached its peak, new letters arrived, but they were different, referencing films like The Exorcist, reviewing movies as if he were a critic, calling it the best satirical comedy that I've ever seen, bizarre, almost comical, and yet still signed with the crosshair, still carrying the chill of authenticity. But some question whether these were truly from Zodiac, whether his voice had been hijacked by hoaxers, or whether the real man had grown bored, erratic, losing his sharpness, drifting into nonsense, because killers evolve, killers change, and perhaps the Zodiac, having tasted fame, was now clinging to it even as his crime slowed, unwilling to let go of the spotlight he had stolen. The suspects list remains endless. Arthur Leigh Allen, Rick Marshall, Lawrence Kane, Richard Gaikowski, Gary Poste. Each one with connections, each one with coincidences, each one with holes. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the Zodiac was not one man at all, but a mask worn by different men. Maybe the letters were copied. Maybe the symbol was stolen. Maybe the truth is messier, scarier, more complicated than we want to admit. Because the human mind craves patterns, craves answers. But the Zodiac thrived on chaos, thrived on confusion, thrived on never letting us close enough to see his real face. What makes the Zodiac so terrifying isn't just what he did. It's what he represented. The idea that someone could outsmart entire police departments, toy with the FBI, manipulate the press, and then vanish without consequence. It's the idea that someone could commit murder after murder, send evidence straight to detectives, leave his signature for the world to see, and still die a free man, still escape justice, still leave behind a mystery unsolved half a century later. And if one man could do that, what does it say about the rest of us, about how fragile the systems meant to protect us really are? For the families of David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stein, the nightmare never ended. They live with the memories, with the unanswered questions, with the fact that the man who took their loved ones was never brought to justice. Their grief becoming part of the Zodiac's legacy, a reminder that behind every cipher, every headline, every chilling letter was blood, was loss, was a human life stolen, and that maybe that is his final cruelty, that he not only terrorized strangers, but left families broken forever. And yet, even in that cruelty, he feeds obsession, because as long as the case remains open, as long as the identity remains hidden, there's always a possibility that tomorrow could bring the answer, that the next DNA test, the next cracked cipher, the next discovered letter could finally reveal his name. And that hope keeps us hooked, keeps us staring into the abyss he created, keeps us chasing him even when deep down we know he may already be dust in the grave, his secrets buried with him. So who was the Zodiac? Was he Arthur Leigh Allen, the man with the watch, the man with the violent streak, the man who lived in plain sight of crimes? Was he Gary Poste, the Air Force veteran with scars in the past? Was he someone we never suspected, someone whose name never even crossed a radar? Or was he no one at all, just a mask, a phantom, a ghost created by his own myth and by our need for answers? Maybe the scariest answer is that we will never know. Maybe the scariest truth is that sometimes evil hides behind a smile, behind glasses, behind a normal job, and never gets unmasked. And if that is true, then the Zodiac won. Because he told us from the very beginning that he loved killing because it was fun, because man was the most dangerous animal, and because he wanted to be remembered. And here we are, 50 years later, still speaking his name, still cracking his codes, still telling his story, still wondering if he is out there, if he is alive, if he is dead, if he is someone we walked past in a grocery store once and never knew, because that is the final terror. The Zodiac could have been anyone, and anyone could have been the Zodiac. This is the Zodiac speaking. Those 5 words still echo across time. Those 5 words still chill the spine. Those 5 words still taunt detectives, still taunt journalists, still taunt every single person who has ever stared at a cipher late at night, hoping to crack the code, hoping to see his name, hoping to bring him into the light. And yet the shadows remain, the puzzle unsolved, the case still open, and the question still alive. Who is the Zodiac? And will we ever truly know? Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Because in part 2, we'll uncover the suspects you've never heard of, the theories police don't talk about, and the evidence that might prove the Zodiac wasn't one man at all, but something far darker, something that changes everything you thought you knew about the case. And if you think the story is chilling now, wait until you see what comes next. Before we dive deeper into this chilling case, hit that subscribe button like you're unlocking the final clue. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next, because every story we tell here pulls you closer to the truth,